Kia ora, this is Kerryn Fields, and you're listening to Retrospectives with John Broughton on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
My heart has been hiding in a box.
All right, we'll get started. First, I've got to congratulate you on your Music Victoria Award. I was cheering from the couch, watching. So thoroughly deserved. It's been quite a whirlwind past 18 months for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has. Music Victoria have been more than generous with, shining a light on what I've been up to, and it has made my very big heart fizzle like fresh lemonade, my friend.
I believe you're already recording on album number 3.
Yes, well, creating albums number 3 and 4, actually, because
Wow.
I'm creating an album with my pal Matt Jogal from Aotearoa, and then, of course, my next, the follow-up to Water. So that's, you never stop creating, but now it's time to start putting these things in place. So, yeah, very excited.
So that's a duet album with Matt, is it?
It is. Yeah,
oh, beautiful.
It is. Yeah, so two projects. One a little bit more sort of in that pure Americana space, alt country, like really leaning into what Matt and I do really, really well. And then, of course, in what I do and how I like to create, I sort of lean into folk and country and, a little bit more of that sort of aesthetic in terms of a soundscape. So it's a wonderful way to sort of, really expand on my writing and what I do, because I'm a prolific songwriter, but I often don't have places to put these songs or record them. So it's nice to be able to go, well, I can sort of pop that on that project and do that for that project. So that's really exciting. I'm really looking forward to that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, really cool.
So looking back, and I'll try not to push your memory too much, but I believe your parents were quite an influence on your discovery and developing a love for music.
Yeah. They're not, musicians necessarily. My mum's, I shouldn't say that necessarily about my mum. She's a fabulous guitar player, incredible singer, but, probably didn't really consider herself a musician. Like she's just a small town hero. But yeah, big music lovers, big storytellers, big boogie shakers. So they didn't necessarily encourage a career in music by any means, or it's not even really a career where I'm from. It's still to this day, to be honest, like it's not really something you head off into the world to do, but certainly a great love of music. And you could sort of find every life lesson you need in a song. For every human emotion, there's a song about it that'll help you through it. So that was kind of their mentality when it came to raising 5 kids. If there's something I can't teach you, then you'll find it in a song.
So if we'd gone for a walk past your childhood home back in the day, what would we have heard wafting out of the windows?
Oh, probably my mum playing guitar.
Okay.
But yeah, oh, goodness, that is a good question. On my dad's side of the radio dial, you'd be hearing things like the Righteous Brothers, CCR, Joan Baez. Oh, goodness me. Real standard stuff, John Denver. Goodness. He absolutely loves the Seekers. Like my dad's he skipped kind of a generation of his own. So he's like a generation behind his own sort of era of music. So he's a little bit old school, as you might say. So, Patsy Cline, anything like crooning country, that's my dad through and through. Whereas my mum, floating out the windows of our childhood home, would be absolutely anything from any era or any genre, all sung by her on the guitar. So pretty lucky in that sense,
So for yourself, were there any particular songwriters that inspired you to the point of wanting to take on songwriting yourself as a creative outlet?
Tracy Chapman would be the first seed planted, and that sort of made me go, oh, there's a place for really hard things in life. There's a place for really difficult conversations and really important topics to explore. And I was always really drawn to that. So I think, in my early formative years, pre-teens was when Jewel and Alanis Morissette and Beck Runga and Nikamoa, great New Zealand artists there, were starting to release their sort of solo projects. So I had a really wonderful sense of solo singer-songwriter, acoustic guitar influences in those years. And that definitely drew my attention away from the Spice Girls. Let's just put it that way.
Have you ever pondered if you would have been eventually drawn to music in the same way, regardless of your parents' influence?
Oh, absolutely. I was born a musician. I just obsessed with it from the get-go. I would be singing before I could speak, singing songs in the cot, at 2 o'clock in the morning, much to my parents' delight. My first song was a banger. It was called Mena Mena Muna Mun. It's a real classic in our family. So I didn't really start songwriting though till much later in my life. But music definitely was something I was drawn to very early on.
You've had a radio background yourself, back in New Zealand, I believe. Tell us about those days, and was there a specific turning point where your attention turned towards pursuing music more so?
It's a little bit to unpack because the radio career was really sort of centered around my physical well-being at the time. So I have a chronic illness, and at sort of during my teenage years and those sort of growing years, it didn't appear that I was going to be able to have physical use of my body. And so radio was something that I could do confidently sitting down or in a place where I didn't have to physically exert myself. So I poured my heart into this career in radio because I love music, I love storytelling, and it just seemed to make sense. And I was very lucky to be supported from age 12. I was inducted into sort of the high school broadcasting group, I guess you want to call it, like a bunch of little sweethearts writing scripts and having a good time at the radio station. So music was always there, and playing guitar and writing poetry, but I never, ever, not even for a second, entertained it as something I would pursue professionally. I was quite content in radio, and as the years progressed and my health improved and I was able to rehabilitate my body enough to be able to walk and resume physical use of my body, I decided that perhaps sitting in a studio for 8 hours a day and commentating on the world wasn't what was going to best fill my jug, that I wanted to be out there actually living life. And now that I had the capacity to do that, so I really only had sort of 2 songs and a whole bunch of confidence and sort of a banged up secondhand guitar, and bought a combi van, and away I went.
You've got a wonderful stage presence. You're a very engaging live performer. Were you a confident stage performer right from the beginning?
Yeah.
Just born to do it?
Well, I started motivational speaking from about age 14. So as I mentioned, I had this really sort of horrific physical ailment, but I always seemed to have a way of navigating really tough things from a very young age, and that allowed me to develop a confident and, I guess, sort of charismatic personality, because I was dealing with really difficult things from a young age. And so that gives you that sort of ability to hold a crowd, for me at least. I had this sharp sense of humor and this way of being cheeky and heartfelt at the same time. So I found myself doing motivational speeches for World Vision, Youth Ambassador and Rotary clubs, and then I would be hosting events in the town like the North Island bodybuilding championships. I'd be the MC or something. So I always had that knack for chats, and with radio, my career sort of building side by side with it as well. It's radio is something that I was a mainstream commercial breakfast host. So you're doing things like hosting Chinese New Year in the city, or you're hosting the big events for the city. And, I'm barely out of my teens and holding a microphone with thousands of people. So to transfer that to a live music capacity was just like, wow, it just comes with it, Sometimes you're singing and sometimes you're banging on about something that's completely irrelevant, but deeply hilarious, or, very emotive.
You're now very much ensconced in the music scene here in Melbourne. Who were some of your first connections when you came here?
Oh, that's a delicious question. That's such an interesting question. My first connections. Well, goodness, John, it took me quite some time to find my feet here in Melbourne. My first connections were really, sort of fellow open micers, really probably folks that aren't really active in the music scene today. But my first true pals came about when I got a job at, for me, my music career started, which was sort of later in my 20s, quite late in my 20s, was when I got the job at the original Billy Hyde store in Flemington. And that's what landed me in the music scene. So up until then, I was sort of just bumbling and thumb sucking and popping up at an open mic night, or, sort of hustling and trying to figure out what to do. What is a music career? And I've just moved to this new country, and I've I'd never even entertained it. And then you move to Melbourne and you're like, people are like second, third generation artists here. They were releasing records at 12, and I'm sort of 25 and going, I'm brand new. So for me, working at Billy Hyde became like a pivotal point where I was in one spot and the community came to me. That's when I met Tash Sultana. We have a very, very close friendship, and we would hang out for, many years in their early teens before they began busking and sort of launching their career. And then it was sort of, fellow blues and roots artists like Grim Faulkner. There's not many people that are sort of active, I guess. We were such new. Yeah, it was just in that sort of pool of newcomers that, unfortunately only sort of 3% of us make it through the first 3 years. So, after that, I would say like Dallas Fresco was probably a big inspiration, even though not genre-wise, but powerful-wise. And the boss at Billy Hyde was her drummer. And so connections like that. Jen Clower, I managed my music, was a great connection to, to cultivate. But yeah, I'm a very big part of the Melbourne music community at large. So, I'm my early influences were not necessarily big names. They were just anyone involved in the industry was someone who I was really interested in finding more about. So it served me really well today, sort of 12, 13 years on, because I have a great, constellation of beautiful stars in which I love to see shine.
Do you ever think about where the status of your music career would be now had you stayed in New Zealand?
It'll just be different. I don't think that New Zealand had at that point for me personally the artistic direction that what I would have needed to cultivate the sound and the style that I have. I certainly felt that country and folk was not something that I didn't even call myself that or have any affiliation with it, because there's such a stigma, I guess, in New Zealand at least as well. We're a big hip hop dubstep. We love our reggae and so having that sort of like, oh, I'm not country and folk, I'm like roots and soul. It's like, no, you're not. But good for you. So I think that if I'd stayed in the North Island, I maybe would have had those types of influences. So I probably sort of been creating quite personal narratives or playing acoustic guitar, but I think that those influences maybe would have shaped a different sound, whereas coming over here to Australia allowed me to immerse myself in a true storytelling culture that, obviously dates back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and in recent times has become, something that the likes of, your Paul Kellys and Casey Chambers, and the Waifs, hugely inspired by the Waifs. So those kinds of influences allowed me to find my true voice. So it just would have been different, I still would have been me, but who knows?
You certainly live up to the traditions of the travelling troubadour. You travel far and wide to do gigs in places where people may not know you very well. Is that a big part of the attraction of doing all that travel, to introduce yourself to new audiences everywhere you go?
Absolutely. We're only just sort of starting to spread our wings in this post-COVID world. Certainly pre-COVID, that was my life full-time, living in the van and traveling and doing shows and festivals. I'm very curious about people. I love going to new towns and experiencing new stories. And I just have a genuine curiosity about people globally. And so music is a vehicle, quite literally, pun intended, to get me to those places and to, satisfy my curiosity about humans at this point in history. So the troubadour lifestyle for me is something that just fits really well, because I do. My mum lives in a caravan with her wife by the sea. My grandparents are massive caravanners, like they, are barely home. I've seen them less than they see me. So I also had a really natural love of being on the road in general, and it was something that was supported by my family, so I didn't feel like an outcast. It was a bit of a weird alternative lifestyle. I was like, this is actually pretty normal, to say as soon as you get your license, get out.
You're also a shining example on how it can all be done independently without record label management, agents sort of backing you. And although some of those things would take some workload off you, would you still be reluctant to hand over some of those responsibilities and lose some of that independence?
Yeah, I like more of a collaborative approach, because I'm very much a CEO. That's my I have the confidence and the brain for it, but I also just had to do it. As you say, like, I'm an independent musician. I've never had any backing, and I moved to a country in which I can't access government support, and to try and win a grant over an Australian resident, for example, would be just damn near impossible. You've got to be really representing. So truly alone out here in the Wild West, cultivating a career in a new country. So I think when it comes to handing over some of the workload, it actually just means more work for you, because you've got to be able to delegate really powerfully. And at this stage in my career, where I've built it over 13 years, you'd have to be so much better than me at what I do, or have a bigger reach. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but I know that I have to build my machine up to a level where I can, I can pay someone to do that job. I know how difficult it is to create an income from this life. So I'm under no, illusion that bringing on a manager or a tour or a booking agent means that it's easier. It means you've actually got to, generate more income and be able to delegate more powerfully. So that could very well happen. But at this stage, I am just getting good at spinning all those plates at once. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back at your first album, was there anything you took out of the recording of that album that you learned that made you look at doing the second album a little bit differently?
Absolutely. I mean, if you hear the first record, it's my baby. I made it. I'm not going to, overly critique it, but you're talking about a bunch of rat bags in a bungalow in a backyard here, creating. I wasn't, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't even really sort of affiliated with a country or folk feel. I didn't really feel quite comfortable in those shoes yet. So I wasn't even really influenced necessarily by my own loves. I was trying to sort of push them deep down in my gut and say, like, no, I want to be more this or more that, and working at a music shop at the same time. So I've got access to every possible instrument and sound. And I think for me, my first record was more of an exploration of sound and an exploration of story. So when it came to creating Water, I had slipped into my shoes by that point. I knew who I am as an artist and a storyteller. So Water was like, well, I can just move into a house and do it in 3 days, because I know who I am now and I can just deliver it. Whereas Rascal was sort of painstakingly cultivated over 2 years, with two different sort of producer engineers, and me just wanting to learn how to engineer and produce at the same time. So the first record was an adventure with all the colors of the rainbow to paint with, and every possible kind of way of going about recording a song. So I learnt, I did almost like my own sort of at-home degree, but unfortunately it probably doesn't really represent my true sound. But that's how it goes, know. That's just how it goes. There's a few crackers on there that I still play at shows, and a few songs that really fit with who I truly am, but it was just a wild adventure, let's put it that way.
Well, you certainly passed the difficult second album test with Water. It is an extraordinary piece of work. I believe you had something like 200 songs to choose from in putting that album together. It must have been a hell of a process whittling them down to the final 10.
Oh, I'm going to be more honest with that and say it's probably more like 25 when you talk about whittling down. So yes, 200 songs, but I'm a prolific songwriter and I'm a practiced songwriter. So when I say 200 songs, we're not talking about 200 bangers. We're talking about the practice and the art of songwriting. So if you speak to a fellow songwriter, they'll tell you, we don't wait for inspiration. We show up as a songwriter because that's my job. So I wrote a song yesterday and then I wrote a song the day before. Are they going to be on the record? Unlikely. But is it important that I write those songs so I can continue to cultivate an idea of what I want to say and how I want to sound? Absolutely. That's my job. So it was more of an exciting
bits.
Cool.
Not a problem. So having 200 songs up your sleeve is quite extraordinary. And I've spoken to many songwriters over the years, and for them, if they've written more than a handful of songs in a year, it's a productive year. It's really hard to get your head around. Did you set out to write as many as possible, or was it they just flow out?
No, I did it on purpose. So I have a great mentor from the Berkeley School of Songwriting in Boston, a friend of mine from New Zealand, who basically just rode me like to write these songs, so she would set me challenges like write a song a day for 14 days or write a song with 2 chords and then this challenge came just before the creation of Water, where she said, write a song every week, film it and put it on the internet. And I did. So for 52 weeks, I wrote a song every week. None of those songs exist on the internet now before you get excited and start Googling. But that very vulnerable process of sharing a raw creation very rapidly extended my ability to write a better song. So these kinds of challenges were part of that process of finding your true voice. And so I probably only write 4 or 5 good songs a year, but I've certainly found that writing a lot of average songs contributes to the compost heap that helps cultivate beautiful roses.
Yeah, I've heard that analogy before. Someone said to me once, it's like fishing. You've got to have your line in the water all the time. Sometimes you might pull out a gumboot or an old tire, but you've got to do that to get to the good fish.
Yeah, you don't catch fish unless you're fishing.
That's right.
You don't write a number one song unless you're writing a song.
Exactly. Yeah. So will the new album include any of the 200 songs that didn't make the cut for Water, or are we looking at a whole new batch of songs?
Yeah, it's a whole new energy. I signed off on Water in May 2020. So you can imagine the new songs that I started to write, started kicking off around, January, Feb 2020. Like I finished recording Water in 2019. As I mentioned, I'm writing every day anyway. So those songs, and then the world around us and the industry and the pandemic and all that kind of stuff started to lean into, well, what am I going to say on this next record? And so I think that, anything that kind of got left behind is probably going to stay in the vault for a bit. Yeah. I still haven't quite figured out what the story is for this next record, but it's revealing itself. And like most things I do, it's highly confronting for me first to look at this body of work and go, my goodness, what am I about to share with the world here? This is another level, another mountain. So I've got to come to terms with that personally and then continue to write powerfully and truthfully around that story. So I think that there is a huge influence of, sort of world events and my own stage in life that is going to come through on this record.
Songwriting in general, do songs generally get written in one sitting with you, or do they sit as works in progress that you keep coming back to before you get them done?
The best songs always come out in one. The ones that are probably going to be your timeless classics for me personally, will come out, but that doesn't mean to say that songs get worked on. Even if a song comes out pretty much fully formed, there might be one word that gets changed on the day of recording, that just brings it to that next level. I enjoy the process of working on songs. But if I have to work on it too hard, I feel like it doesn't work for me as well. But in saying that, over the process of this pandemic and writing throughout lockdowns and all that kind of, weirdness, things slowed down a lot. I didn't have that sort of prolific banging out songs. I'm not being influenced by the outside world. I'm not on the road. I'm not meeting 1,000 people a week. So I'm not collecting these sort of stories and narratives. So there was a lot of I'm so bored with myself and my own stories. So I had to really...
So the notoriety and acclaim you receive for Water, it must have been a wonderful tonic for you for starters, but do you feel a little bit of a weight of expectation upon you now with the next one?
Oh my God. I'd never experienced any kind of expectation in my career. I was invisible. Yes and no. I create music for me first, so that's what I have to keep myself grounded with, is that if I was creating for the purpose of other people loving me, then that inauthenticity would exclude me from, the genuine career that I'm building. So I have to keep that in my heart as I'm creating this next record, and just trying to repeat Water or doing anything without integrity as a songwriter, it just isn't going to work. So I just have to move forward. You just have to let the next body of work be whatever it will be, and the same for every record that follows.
Water for me is one of the most honest sounding records I've heard in a long time. There's no studio trickery. It all sounds very natural. It doesn't sound studio bound at all. It's got that kitchen table, back porch sort of feel to it. Was that the feel you were aiming for?
Oh, 1,000%. Working with Fraser in the Avery Studios, and we went there to record Mama, the first single, and very quickly established that I was not comfortable in the studio being like layered and cut and edited. And I was just like, oh, this isn't going to work for this body of work. So we moved into a house to, just get away from it all and do it. I was like, I want to hear the room. I want to hear the birds and the trees outside, I want to deliver these songs top to toe, down the barrel as they are. And that's another thing with creating the next body of work is like, do I do that the same way? Like I have a sound that's so beautiful, and I don't know if the next body of work will be recorded in the same way as Water, but I feel a kindred connection to that style of recording. Even Rascal was recorded in a backyard bungalow, so I feel like there will be, and I work closely with the elements. I'm a very magical person, so working outside or working in interest for next record as well.
Now, of course, COVID affected everybody when it reared its ugly head and restricted us all from doing the things we love to do, and working musicians very much so. Now the dust has settled to some degree. Can you look back and take any positives out of that whole experience? I mean, for example, with those 200 songs that happened?
Well, those happened before COVID, so that was all done and dusted by 2019. It's a bit of a loaded question because I don't want to diminish or speak on behalf of other people's experiences. There's been such a wide variety of trauma that has unfolded in our time in history due to the pandemic. So yes, there are positives that have come through from that. I live here and with my sweetheart, and we cultivated our beautiful garden together, and we got to spend a lot of wonderful time. And as a troubadour, I was never home. Like she barely had to see me or put up with me. So there was wonderful togetherness that happened. Also, I spent 2020 in lockdown in New Zealand. I got trapped there in inverted commas. I say that loosely, but I was grounded in New Zealand for 8 months. So as a growing up, I got to spend time with my family. Again, as a traveling troubadour, I left as soon as I could walk again. So to have pancakes with grandma on Sunday and to see my nieces and nephews, and my dad was absolutely rapt. Like he called Jacinda himself and told her to keep the borders closed. Like he was stoked that I was home. I just never stay. So I was so privileged and so lucky that I was where I was, and I got that opportunity to really reground and get a sense of who I am. And I think that really helped with releasing Water and coming back to Australia and having a strong sense of identity, because I re-emerged from New Zealand with all of this love from my homeland and all of this gorgeous family time. So that was a huge positive for me. And then I came back to Melbourne, and the biggest, most powerful, I guess, seed that has come from the community here is just, it highlighted just how much we love each other and how close we are as a community and how we really support one another. And the pandemic just made us like a really tight family. And I'm so grateful for that we all got to see one another in really dark times, and that cultivates a strength as a community that you can't, you just can't ask for that. Tough times can bring beautiful connections, and that's certainly the case here in the community here in Melbourne.
Wonderfully put. Wonderfully put. And there are so many elements to great storytelling. The story itself, the words, how you communicate and present the story to an audience. Are there any particular elements that you focus on more so than the others, or are they all an equal part of the puzzle?
I think they're all an equal part of the puzzle. I try not to think too hard about things, John. That's when I start sliding down a very scary mental health water slide. No one wants to jump on that free ride. So thinking too hard is probably not the best way to approach creating. Just being your true, authentic self. As a storyteller, I always ask myself, am I telling the truth? And then I ask myself, am I telling the best version of the truth? And then am I using all the best words I possibly can to convey that? Am I being really honest? Because that's what I'll die by. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not creating a body of work for you. I'm creating it for me. And the more honest I am about my human experience, the more connected I am to the wider experience, because I've become a truthful version of all of us inside a story that once belonged to me and now is part of us all.
How therapeutic an exercise is songwriting for you?
Oh, mate, it's cheaper. It's the cheapest form of therapy you could imagine. That's why I do it. That's why the truth is so important. That's why you go to therapy, right? To find your truth. Well, that's incorrect. Like, that's not correct for everyone, but that's one of the reasons why you can use therapy as a powerful way to, get through your own noise. And songwriting for me does that powerfully. And that's another reason why writing 200 songs is like, well, that's just 200 hours of therapy, John. Yeah. The 10 you hear on Water is what we call the breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, just before I let you go, I think I heard you do some workshops working with the elderly in aged care.
Yeah. I created a business, a program called Enjoy Music. It's on hold at the moment. I put that on hold at the end of 2021 because, of course, I still cannot resume that work. But yeah, I'm the director of Joy. And what I do is I create a program that engages with all levels of residents and care through the power of music and storytelling. I help support memory support. I've been with people as they were dying, using music as a way to support those in palliative care and their families around, and also empowering other artists to do the same thing and to generate an income and a sustainable way of touring, because, of course, there are residents and care across every part of the globe.
Of course.
And it's a great way to support yourself as an artist and also just contribute back to the most vulnerable members of our community that, as we know, we're left for dead, really, in our pandemic. So aged care is a huge passion of mine, and I certainly look forward to resuming that work once we are allowed to return.
So how would a typical workshop there operate, or is there such thing as a typical workshop?
Well, I kind of use it's a combination of both my radio broadcasting career and also music, of course, but I also worked in music workshops for little ones. So I have themed shows, I guess, so those that will explore jazz or 50s or love songs or crooners or classical music. So I create these programs much like a radio show, and then I incorporate things like trivia for those with more cognitive abilities, and then I have booklets that go with each program. So you've got a visual element, but then you've also got different cultures that you incorporate, because not everyone's from a white Western background and has that sort of musical love. So the program offers quite a variety of, I guess, engaging 1 hour long sessions that you can take from place to place, and it just means that you're a little bit more than just sort of performing your own repertoire of covers that you enjoy, but really having a sense of direction and connection when it comes to music. And I learn a lot too, so I'm very passionate about learning those different genres and eras and styles. So and it's fun for everyone, because I with the use of streaming and a Bluetooth speaker and my instruments, and it just becomes this wild party of just joy. It's just joy. It's so much joy. And then I pack up and take it to the next place.
Sounds fantastic. Kerryn, I will let you go before the internet decides to cough up on us again, but thank you for being so generous with your time. I don't have to ask you what your plans are for 2023. You've already told me there's 2 albums and lots of touring.
Lots of touring.
And we'll see you down at KC Radio in August as well. We're all excited about that.
Oh, me too. I can't wait. Thank you so much, John. Thanks for your patience with my internet. Wouldn't be the same without a few internet glitches.
That's right. Yeah, no, we can work around that. You've given me heaps. Thanks so much, Kerryn.
You.
All
My
the best.
pleasure.
Safe travels
Take
to
care.
Newstead.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.